National Guard troop is dead and another one is fighting for his life. And the man accused of pulling the trigger is an Afghan national who should never have been here in the first place. Tonight, after announcing Sarah Beckstrom's death, the president announced the most aggressive immigration order to date, a permanent ban on all immigration from third world countries. But critics are saying he's racist, he's dangerous, it's unconstitutional. So the question is President Trump dividing America or is he defending it? Stay with me because what you see next is going to change the way that you see this entire situation. Hit that subscribe button, turn on your notification bell, take a look at this.
I'm Jerika Duncan. On the eve of a national holiday, we begin with a national tragedy. 2 members of the West Virginia National Guard on crime-fighting duty in Washington, D.C. were shot and critically wounded today. They were ambushed just blocks away from the White House. CBS News captured the immediate aftermath of the shooting right there. A suspect was wounded and taken into custody and is now in the hospital. President Trump in Florida for Thanksgiving posted that the shooter will, quote, pay a very steep price. He's ordering 500 more National Guard troops into Washington, D.C.
We've got new deadly developments in yesterday's ambush attack on the National Guard members just steps away from the White House. Hello, I'm Steve Eager. 2 West Virginia National Guard members were shot while on duty in Washington, D.C. Tonight, President Trump announced 20-year-old Sarah Beckstrom died from her injuries. Her fellow guardsman, 24-year-old Andrew Wolf, remains in critical condition tonight.
Well, Steve, good evening. A tough day for a small West Virginia community and a fast-moving federal investigation that continues tonight. This as new details emerge about the accused gunman.
Heartbreak ripples through West Virginia and beyond after 20-year-old Sarah Beckstrom lost her life after being shot Wednesday afternoon in what investigators call a targeted ambush. Her partner on that detail, 24-year-old Andrew Wolf, was also shot and critically hurt. Those who know the young soldier trying to grapple with it all.
But my prayers are definitely with Andy and their family, and we've just tried to share the story because I know he's getting lots of love and prayers from our whole community, and we have a nice small knit town, but he's getting prayers from all across the country.
So you see that story right there. We've got the National Guard that was being deployed in Washington, D.C. under orders of the president. Doesn't matter if you agree with President Trump. It doesn't matter if you like President Trump. If you are an American, you cannot stand for someone who is going to murder American law enforcement. These individuals were just following orders. They were doing their jobs. They weren't arresting people. They weren't gulags. They weren't, what you like to hear people refer to as Nazis. They were just out there just patrolling Washington, D.C., trying to get the violence under control. And 2 individuals who are law enforcement, who are military individuals, were killed by a migrant in this country. Take a look at this.
We begin with Fox News Alert. A 20-year-old National Guard member dead and another fighting for his life after Wednesday night's ambush in Washington.
The Washington, D.C. Fire and EMS Department sharing this video of them honoring the victim, Sarah Beckstrom, as her body was transferred.
Sarah Beckstrom of West Virginia, one of the guardsmen that we're talking about, highly respected, young, magnificent person, started service in June of 2023, outstanding in every way. She's just passed away. She's no longer with us. She's looking down at us right now.
That was the president breaking the tragic news yesterday. The president also saying 24-year-old Andrew Wolf still fighting for his life right now. His family asking for prayers.
The suspect had worked with the CIA and evacuated to the U.S. from Afghanistan in 2021. The death of Beckstrom means he will likely face upgraded charges to include murder in the first degree. The DOJ also pushing for the death penalty.
We will do everything in our power to seek the death penalty against that monster who should not have been in our country. We're praying for a recovery for them, but worst case scenario, minimum life in prison with terrorism charges.
I want you to think about this for a moment. For all those individuals out there who don't particularly care for Donald Trump, you don't agree with the way that he's conducting his office as president. I don't agree with any politician 100% of the time. But this is not the time for politics. This is an individual who was brought into this country from Afghanistan. He drove from Washington State to Washington, D.C. He bought a gun and he went out and he shot 2 National Guard troops. It's hard in my state of Illinois for law-abiding citizens to get a gun. This individual was in this country from Afghanistan, bought a gun, drove across the country, and killed shot 2 National Guard troops. And some of you are still out there looking at this situation and you're making a judgment about whether or not you like Donald Trump. These 2 National Guard troops had nothing to do with the orders they were given from Donald Trump. They were going into Washington, D.C., following orders, trying to keep you and I, Americans, safe. And if you do not have an opinion that the Army, the National Guard, the actual military, whose sole responsibility is to protect our way of life, if you side on any one side other than the military in this situation, you need to seriously reconsider what it is that you believe it is to be an American and what it is that you believe that the Army, what the National Guard, what the military is supposed to do to protect American citizens, both domestically and abroad.
Minimum life in prison with terrorism charges.
And with that, let's bring in U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Jeanine Pirro. I know it's a tough time for you, Jeanine, but can we talk right off the top about, are we going to see an escalation in charges?
Oh, there's no question. First of all, our hearts go out and our thoughts and prayers go out to the family of a beautiful 20-year-old Sarah Beckstrom, who answered the call to serve her nation. And she volunteered, and she ended up being shot ambush style on the cold streets of Washington, D.C. By an individual who will now be charged with murder in the first degree. There are certainly many more charges to come, but we are upgrading the initial charges of assault to murder in the first degree. And we are hoping that the more information we can get and the more investigation that is going on 24/7 now, around the clock in Washington, the more we will find out about what actually happened in terms of this individual even being in this country and being in a position to ambush and shoot down an innocent young woman who was doing her duty to the people of this country.
Let me say this. I don't care if you don't like Fox News. I don't care if you don't like Donald Trump. I'm not a Trumpster. I'm not a MAGA Republican. I'm a conservative. But I want you to think about one thing. Sarah Beckstrom was 20 years old. Think about what you were doing when you were 20 years old. Were you defending your country? What were you doing at 20 years old? This woman joined the National Guard. She was deployed in Washington, D.C. She was following orders. She wasn't arresting anyone. She wasn't violating anyone's rights. She was just there doing her job, and she got murdered by an Afghan national who was led into this country by the Biden administration. Because the far left has this idea that anyone in the world has the right to come to this country. We've got to do a better job about vetting individuals who come into this country, because if someone has malintent, they're going to harm you or me, or they're going to harm someone whom you and I love. And we cannot allow individuals to come from around the world into this country and do Americans harm. So now Donald Trump comes out with this order, and I guarantee you You're going to hear for the rest of this month how he's this racist, xenophobic, tyrant dictator, but I agree with the decision that he made. This is his response to this shooting that happened by this Afghan national.
Breaking overnight, the ambush-style shooting of National Guard troops in Washington, D.C. has taken another tragic turn. One of those Guard members has died, the other still fighting for his life. President Trump announcing that 20-year-old Army Specialist Sarah Beckstrom died from her injuries on Thanksgiving. He called her an incredible person who was outstanding in every way. New images from overnight of law enforcement officers lining the streets for the transfer of her body. Beckstrom's former boyfriend spoke to CNN and said she had a huge heart and would do anything for anyone. The other wounded Guard member, a 24-year-old Andrew Wolf, remains hospitalized and is in critical condition. We're also learning more about the suspect in custody, a 29-year-old Afghan national. He arrived in the United States in 2021 on a resettlement program after working with the CIA in Afghanistan, helping American troops. President Trump, in the wake of the shooting, says the U.S. will, quote, permanently pause migration from all third world countries. He also says the U.S. will re-examine all green cards issued to people from what the administration calls 19 countries of concern. CNN's Betsy Klein joining us now live from Washington this morning. What is the latest on this investigation?
Well, Sarah, an interagency investigation is now underway to determine exactly how this horrific tragedy could have happened, while the Trump administration, meanwhile, is ramping up its aggressive immigration policies. We know that this suspect is an Afghan national who came to the United States in 2021. He applied for asylum in 2024, and it was granted under the Trump administration in April of this year. Now, we've also learned that this suspect worked with U.S. forces, including the CIA, starting in 2011. A U.S. official tells CNN that he was vetted by intelligence agencies and clean on all checks. The question now of his pathway to violence is going to be a major target for investigators. Now, officials say it's still too soon to say what the motive is, but President Trump, as he addressed troops on Thanksgiving, offering his own speculation. Listen.
He went cuckoo. I mean, he went nuts. And that happens, too. It happens too often with these people. You see them. But look, this is how they come in. This is how they're standing on top of each other. And that's an airplane. There was no vetting or anything. They came in unvetted. And we have a lot of others in this country. We're going to get them out. But they go cuckoo. Something happens to them.
So we have to make a decision as Americans. We have to decide whether or not we have the authority, whether or not we have the right to set a minimum standard for individuals who are coming into this country who might do us harm. I don't know what's going on with this individual. I don't know if he was of a different mindset when he was being immigrated into America, then he changed his mind. I don't know if he was surreptitiously just giving the answers that he knew that he needed to give so that he could get into the country and then wait for an opportunity to actually retaliate like he did. But in either case, as a sovereign nation, we have a right to say to individuals, you may or you may not come into this country. We can no longer allow innocent Americans, especially members of our military, to lose their lives because we're trying to fulfill some altruistic global rule of letting anyone who wants to come into the United States come here. If you're going to come into this country, you need to prove that you have an allegiance to this country, number one, and then number two, you're going to bring some value. Absent those two things, you don't have a right to come into America. So I have a right to say as a citizen who can and cannot come into this country, and it is not racist, and I'm so tired of Democrats playing that card. It is not racist for Americans to make judgments about individuals of other ethnicities or other nationalities and say yes or no, you may or may not come into this country, not because you have a right to come here, but because we have the right to say whether or not you can or cannot come here. We have to make the decisions that are in the best interest of America. And I'm going to be uploading some new videos that are talking about international and domestic issues. We've got to start making some hard choices. We've got to start making decisions about protecting law-abiding citizens over would-be individuals who are either criminals, alleged criminals, or would-be criminals. We have the right as Americans to say, you know what, I don't trust you, so you can't come. Period, end of story. No one has a right to come to this country. I really, really appreciate everybody following this channel and watching everything that we've been uploading. We're going to be doing a whole lot more on a much wider range of stories. I appreciate you. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, drop a hype, but do me a favor, let's jump in the comment section. Tell me what your opinion is. Do you think that anyone who wants to come to this country has a right to do so? And what happens if someone does come into this country and they do an American harm to the point of death? What should our response be as voters and as U.S. citizens? I appreciate you for hanging out this long. I'll catch you in the next one.